We are live, Your Worship.
Good afternoon, Council. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of June 24th, 2025 to order. I want to make one announcement before we go into the adoption of the agenda. We have a long, detailed agenda today. I'd like to try and get through this in 3 hours. If we are unable to get our work done, I will recess the meeting and we will start again tomorrow morning. I want to adopt the agenda as amended, and my amendments that the agenda be adopted to move item 11E, liquor license 006, to immediately following item 9B, and to include the community charter section 90.1C, labor relations and other employees item under item 15 in camera. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Palmer. All in favor? Motion's carried. I'd like to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 10th. Someone want to make that motion for me? Councillor Cherry, Councillor Lusow, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Solis. Just a question regarding the wastewater treatment plant. There was discussion award on that. And you sent subsequent emails. Maybe you could just make a brief statement regarding that, because I think it directly relates to that motion.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have approval. I was going to do it under announcements from the mayor at appropriate time. Thank you. We have approval from the ministry for our liquid waste treatment plan. We have the go ahead. Mr. Black can speak to that if he wants, but definitely we have the approval. In the business arising, we had awarded the contract so that they could get their subcontractors lined up, knowing full well that they wouldn't start things until we got that approval. So now we have everything, and they can now move forward on that, and you will get that as you requested that in your email.
Thank you.
All right. Anything, Mr. Black, you'd like to add? No, all right. Any other business arising? Seeing none, I'm going to go on to item 5A, the annual report. Does someone want to put the motion on the table for me? Councillor Lusow.
I move that the 2024 annual report be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion? I just want to say thank you to the staff for doing all that work, getting an annual report ready and having that already gone out to the public for their input. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Going on to announcements from the mayor, I just want to say congratulations to our graduates of Revelstoke Secondary School 2025. It's wonderful to see all the hard work that they've done come to fruition, and we wish them all the best in their future, and hope they have a great grad ceremony coming up on Friday. Canada Day is coming up next week. I just want to reiterate that we have the kids bicycle decorating in Grizzly Plaza at 12 noon. The parade will start at 1 p.m. from the courthouse down First Street to Mackenzie Avenue and up to Queen Elizabeth Park. And then ceremonies will start at 2 p.m. there with the flag raising, some announcements and some music. So just encourage everyone in the community to come out. Another wonderful thing is our pump track is nearing completion, and we will formally open that 12 noon on July 3rd. And just encourage everyone to come out who wants to give that a try after we cut the ribbon at 12 noon. And then the pump track will be fully engaged and open to the community. All right, we're going to move on to recommendations from committee. Finance Standing Committee draft budget. Someone will put that motion on the table for me, please. Councillor Cherry.
I move that draft 2026 budget schedule be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Motion's carried. Development cost charges bylaw. Mr. Black, Mr. Simon, you have a brief presentation before we put this motion on the table. Is that correct?
Should the council have any questions, we are prepared to provide a little one pager on the screen. Basically, the information presented here today allows for a grace period of month plus for applicants to get their applications in for development services to have a permit issued prior to August 1st, then they're under the old DCCs. Anything new coming in will be subject to the new DCCs. So we're asking for 1 month delay in the implementation so that we have more time for our community to get their applications in.
Great. So I will read the new motion here momentarily, but basically starting August 1st, 2025, that's when the new DCs will come into effect, give that grace period. But anything in stream will start 1 year from today, in June 24th, 2026. So I'm going to put that motion on the table, that development cost charges bylaw number 2414 be adopted, and that the effective date for development cost charges bylaw number 2414 be set at August 1st, 2025. Can I get a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Cherry, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, so just with that little change of the date. So for those changes in stream, that 1 year thing, so I'm just wondering if that, are we good with that date or should that also be August 1st?
So staff checked with Mr. Short and the legislation, and it says 1 year from adoption, how we start that.
So it's adopted, but not of,
So we're going to adopt now,
yes.
and then it comes into effect for those in stream 1 year from this date.
Yeah, I'll check with staff. So the problem I'm having is it's adopted, but we're not enforcing it, but it's a bylaw. So it seems to me that we don't have a choice. So if the adoption and be adopted effective August 1st. But if it's actually adopted today, I don't know that we have that discretion to not follow the bylaw.
So Mr. Simon is just hooking up his computer, but he checked with Mr. Short, and Mr. Short checked the legislation so that we were on stream. But go ahead, Mr. Simon.
Thank you, through your worship. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
So a little bit of nuance here, and our team has worked really closely with Mr. Black since we're the ones that administer the bylaw after it's adopted at building permit, subdivision stage, etc. So you can think of it as kind of two different items. You have how are in-stream applications dealt with, and that is purely under the legislation. So from the date of adoption, if you have submitted an application prior to June 24th, 2025, your application is considered in-stream. You have 1 year to get all your building permits associated with that application issued. If they're issued within that year, so June 24th, 2026, then you're subject to the old DCC rates. If you get it issued June 25th, 2026, you're subject to the new DCC rates. What we're recommending is a month grace period, you could call it, that would be separate from how the in-stream applications are dealt with under the legislation, where you adopt the bylaw today, but it doesn't actually take effect until August 1st. And what that will do is give some time for applicants to get their ducks in a row, give some time for staff as well to make sure that our staff are trained on the new bylaw, since it is a different way that we are calculating DCCs now, and to notify the public a little bit more in advance. So all that grace period really does is if someone submitted a building permit between today and it's issued before July 31st, they're subject to the old rates. If it's issued August 1st or later, then they're subject to the new rates.
Follow up, Councilor Palmer?
No, I understand and agree with the intent. I think there's a little technical thing there. I'll leave that at this because, yeah, there's a little technical thing. I'll talk to staff after.
Okay.
The only problem is if on that 1 month, so that's just this 1 month where there's an adopted bylaw and we're choosing not to enforce the bylaw. It feels a little bit out of line because we don't have that discretion to not actually follow the bylaw.
Yeah, understand. comment, Mr. Sun?
Through your worship, we did work with Mr. Short on this, and it is common, and it does even have a term, grace period is how it's identified, where the bylaw is adopted, but it doesn't fully take effect until X, Y, and Z date. And just one thing that you should note as well, that month, like, it will be important for applicants to be in the know and to put the word out, but the likelihood of someone applying for a building permit this week and having it fully issued for anything substantial, it's probably not gonna happen right now, and Mr. Gibson can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we're looking at that 4 to 6 week turnaround for building permits to be fully issued. And again, for that grace period, everything would have to be fully issued for them to still be subject to the old rates if they aren't a in-stream application.
Right. All right. Any other comments?
I believe Ms. Director Black had his hand up.
Oh, Director Lund.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the reason behind this action is that the province actually approved this at a much faster rate than we initially anticipated, which was supposed to be over 2 months. And so we believe that we had a few more weeks to get our ducks in a row here as staff in order to implement this properly. And so we're asking for this grace period so that, as Director Simon indicated, the community and the staff have time to get the process put together and make sure that we have some guides put out for the community so they understand what is going on and why, and give some examples of how these things are going to be applied, when, where, how, etc. And that's
All right. Any other comments? Councillor Lund.
Through the chair, yeah, just seeking some clarity for understanding. The first bullet point on the left references development permits, subdivision building permits, etc. But if you read further down, it really seems the bar is building permits, so that anything before or after June 24th. I guess my question is on that first bullet point, rezoning, DP, subdivision, if they are considered in-stream applications, what does that mean for them? It seems to be superfluous information the way I read it right now. I'm just trying to understand what the difference is. If the hard deadline is building permits and that date.
To your worship, the implementation or collection of the DCCs occurs at BP with this newly adopted bylaw. So that is when the money is collected. And so these processes up front do not impact the DCC itself, the DP, BP, subdivision. So the only time that this DCC kicks in is at BP. So if you're in process with a subdivision, et cetera, you have to have your EP done by 1 year after 2025, June 24.
Okay.
So that's the in stream. This grace period allows us to move another month into that to help them get that front end in. The deadline date still remains June or July 31st.
Okay. Okay.
Of the next year.
Oh,
And
so,
then anything new coming in, maybe.
okay, for sure. I got you. Yeah, I just wanted to see clarity. So if you have DP subdivision BP before June 24th or this 1 month grace period, then you have 1 year to get your building permit applied for, and then you will be under the old DCCs.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All
Sorry.
right. No, it's good. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor? This motion has been approved unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff. It's been a long time coming to get the DCCs approved. Moving on to item 9B, zoning amendment bylaw 2417. We've had a public hearing on that. I deferred this to today to.
Is there a number 2 for the DCC bylaw, or did we put that forward already?
I put it all together in, pardon me. Yeah, there is a number 2. The in-stream applications be considered under the previous development cost charges bylaw 1781, provided permits are issued no later than June 24, 2026 in accordance with the Local Government Act. Seconder for that motion, please, Councillor Devlin. And that basically, with all due respect, we've answered that question. So I will call the question on that. All those in favor? This motion's been approved. Thank you, Ms. Floyd. Moving on to item 9B, Someone want to put the motion on the table for me, please? Counselor Devlin.
We'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2417 be read a third time.
Seconder for the motion, please. Counselor Cherry, any discussion on the motion? I will basically say that we went through second reading, we had the public hearing, we listened to the proponent and a couple other people. We get several emails in, all in favor with the exception of 2, I believe, on that. So I'm supportive of this moving forward. Any comments from balance of council? Seeing none, I'll call a question on third reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Councillor Devlin, would you put the number 2 on?
I will move that zoning amendment bylaw number 2417 be adopted.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'm now going to bring 11E up under 9B. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Luciano, are you raising your hand?
Sure. That council endorsed staff's comments based on the regulatory criteria of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for a manufacturer lounge area endorsement application.
Okay, seconder for that motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Item number 2. Someone put that on for me, please, Councillor Lucel.
Keep going. That the feedback from residents, if any, solicited by notification letters mailed to property owners within 100 meters of the subject property be provided to the LCRB.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 3. Councillor Lucel.
The council recommend the approval of the manufacturer lounge area endorsement application for the following reasons. The location of the proposed liquor license is consistent with the official community plan, is a permitted use in the comprehensive development zone 8 and compatible with the other permitted uses that are currently in operation on the subject property. B, no negative impacts on the neighboring and overall community are anticipated as a result of the manufacturer lounge area endorsement. And C, if the application is approved, the impact is expected to be positive and that it will support the growth of tourism and offer a social venue for residents and visitors.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on this motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 4, please.
That the LIQ 2025-006 report dated June 24th, 2025 be provided to the LCRB as background.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Staples. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Soul. So I just noting that the only public comment is around parking issues, again, flagging that need to have that big flag parking strategy in place. Because it keeps on coming over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? All those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to item C, bylaw repeal mobile home park bylaw. Someone put that motion on the table for me, Councillor Cherry.
I move that the title of bylaw to repeal certain bylaws number 2420 be amended to bylaw number 2420 to repeal mobile home park bylaw 1080 for clarity.
Second for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Simon, any comments?
After your worship, no comments.
Okay. Anyone else from council? I'll call Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be voting against the repeal of this bylaw. Well, some parts may be outdated, others offer clarification and won't be replaced. I don't think the timing is great. I would support communications as something that came previously before council to reach out to community members, including the 13% of residences that are within manufactured home parks, to explain a little bit more about what's going on. And without that step, I can't support this repeal at this time.
All right. Any other comments? Councillor Devlin?
Just to make a point, this motion is about changing the name of it, not repealing it.
Yes. All right. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Orlando is opposed, balanced councillor in favor. This motion passes. Item number 2, Councillor Cherry.
Move that bylaw number 2420 to repeal mobile home park bylaw 1080 be read a third time as amended.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Note Councillor Orlando is opposed, balance of council is in favor. Number 10, unfinished business. Councillor Orlando, you have a notice of motion. And before I ask you to put this motion on the table, I just have a couple questions, one for you and one for staff. And a fairly lengthy motion. Councillor Orlando, did you work with the planning staff on this motion or this motion, one motion, I guess?
No.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then for staff, it appears to me that there is a policy in place, but my concern is what will fall off the planning and development plate if we move this forward. If you could just answer that for me, please. Mr. Simon.
To your worship, or through your worship to all of council, several of these items would require external guidance, legal review, legislative review. Some of them would certainly be very time consuming for staff, so we would anticipate that the short-term rental project would probably fall by the wayside this year. Our applications would probably take a hit in terms of processing timelines, and then also the project that we're looking at doing for affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, density bonusing under Bill 16 to try and see how new market development can contribute to affordable housing in this community. Would likely be stalled, and we'd be at risk of losing our $100,000 that is currently funded for that project through the province.
Okay, appreciate that comment. Now, Ms. Floyd, just for clarity, do I get Councillor Orlando to put 1 through 7 all on at one time, or do we go as per number?
It is one motion.
One motion. So Councillor Orlando, would you put your motion on the table for me, please?
Sure, and there's just a slight change in the name of the actual policy. I have a shortened version, so I'm going to read out the longer version. And the motion is that council requests staff to review and report back with proposed amendments to the manufactured home park redevelopment, residential tenant protection, and strata conversion policy, including but not limited to items 1 through 7. Listed here, if that's okay with council to read it that way.
Sure.
Just for brevity. Yeah, and I would like to speak to the reasons why. Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
Worship, there is an and that statement
So
attached as well.
could you read the and that to Councillor Orlando at the bottom after number 7?
Oh, yeah, sorry, and that staff provide a report outlining possible implications, legal considerations, and options for enforcement mechanism. That's okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You'll need a seconder.
And I need a seconder. So Councillor Luciao, you're going to second that. Councillor Orlando, carry on.
Yeah, so thank you to Mayor and Council. So this motion here follows a presentation at a May Committee of the Whole meeting by resident Matt Cote, who raised some issues about some of the issues that residents are facing in the interim, not during an application to redevelop, but prior to that, ongoing issues that they're facing. Really what I am shooting for here is to have staff review options, including streamlining that review to take a look at what would fit with the policy that we adopted a couple of years ago for to amend, to improve it. I've listed a bunch of things here. Whether or not we pursue all of them is really up to the discretion of staff who are who created the policy and have the option to suggest what additional options would or would not work best with this policy. I'm bringing this forward in response to growing concerns from residents in mobile home parks, which according to some of the planning work studies we've done is about 13% of residences in the city. We've heard residences are being blocked from transferring leases when they sell their property. We've also, I've heard stories of eviction concerns. And the concern is that the policy itself, having a redevelopment policy, is maybe incentivizing some of the motivations for these situations. I think these tactics, when we look at tenant protection, which is one of the words in the name of the policy itself, puts people at risk of displacement without fair compensation. The other communities mentioned here, we've put some other policies forward. Those are all documents forwarded to council by Mr. Cote that sort of opens a policy sort of parameters discussion about some of the options or tools that are available to the city in any upgrade. What this motion does is ask staff to review our policy, explore best practices, consult with local groups and housing organizations and provincial organizations to explore some best policies. And the goal really is just to ensure fair treatment for all residents before and during a redevelopment proposal. And yeah, I'm hoping that council will support putting asking staff to do this. I think a good process, hearing concerns about timing, is to, for example, put together like a preliminary report outlining options, sort of a desktop exercise, and council could explore that in there. And certainly, like, for example, with the presentation that Mr. Cote gave in May at the Committee of the Whole meeting, during that discussion, staff mentioned, for example, that they could look at demolition permit numbers that have happened since the policy started versus any potential application that's coming forward as a mechanism to regulate what is going on in the interim. That is not reflected in the policy, and that is sort of something along those lines that is something that could be added to the policy to provide clarity for everyone involved. I think in terms of time commitment, of course, we don't want to burden staff in a way that reduces other commitments they have on their plate right now. So this is not to create a new policy. This is to enhance. This motion is to asking staff to present options to enhance an existing policy. And it provides a list of comparable policies to streamline the process. And staff can work on a preliminary report and report back on options in order to reduce the burden on staff time. And I would just say, yeah, it's really, I think, important to residents who have uncertainty. Certainly this weekend, as an example, I've heard from 2 different residents who contacted me with concerns, people I'd never talked to before. From hearing other members of the community over the past little while, I think there's quite a bit of concern about this, including providing information. So I'm asking council to support this. I don't think it's a big commitment. I think it's just a commitment to explore some more options for the protection and put those policy options before staff.
Okay. Any comments from council before I wait? I'm concerned about this. We've heard what staff's done. I've gone over this kind of thing right through from 1 through 7. The personal protection of residents from eviction taxes prior to development application will be filed. But just the wording of that makes it look like we're going to have to do that in perpetuity. We don't have the staffing. We have the ability to do those sorts of things. So I'm not for that. The residential tenancy does this and looks after it. Item number 3, the decision not to sign Form 1097. I understand there's a new form out there and they're working with banks. One bank's a holdup, but they're getting that done. I look at this and I'm not supportive in the way it's written. Item number 6, formal proactive procedures to maintain appropriate databases. residents and leaseholders to be used by staff during redevelopment. That's out of our wheelhouse in my mind. And what do? Go to everybody and say, hey, give us a copy of your lease so we can understand how that works. Just a little concerned about that. And then item number 7, city staff consult active manufactured homeowners society, social development committee, and local social housing organizations with a housing mandate during formulation of policy amendments. And I'm wondering what the point is with that to be concise and whatnot. And then further, if we were to move this forward, I believe we're going to have to farm this out, and who's going to pay for that? Where's the money going to come from? So those are my concerns. Councilor Palmer, you have a comment?
Thank you, Mary Souls. So I guess just from reviewing from my own benefit, largely is where we've been. So there was that policy, good intentions, and staff, I think, did a good job of providing some wording around a policy that we have very, very limited jurisdiction, and that policy was there. Certainly at that committee, the whole meeting, there was an expression that maybe a misunderstanding of the intent behind that because of the title. And so some of the dialogue that happened with that, I think, was appreciated by the presenter. So that this council has worked on this. It has been an issue that we've worked collectively with staff on trying to address an issue that is largely outside of municipal jurisdiction. I will not be able to support the motion as it is. I'll go through the points from my perspective. So number 1, the protection of residents from eviction tactics. That is not, we do not have the power to do that. That's provincial mandate. And so, and then the second, the strengthening of compensation guarantees, same thing. That is provincial. We don't have the ability at the local level to enforce other compensation mechanisms. We just simply do not have that. Again, kind of echoing on the point number 3, that Form 1097. I'm going to be coming back to this after just on some potential solutions of advocacy, but on that again, we do not have that authority as local government to force banks or developers on forms that are outside of municipal processes.
Right.
Tenancy threshold, compensation eligibility. The only area potential tools we have is through zoning and those as to what's allowed, and that's already kind of ingrained in the mobile home parks. The comparison of the policies with Langley Mission, Kelowna, and other municipalities, that might be an interesting thing. So we have a benchmark with our policy, and I know this topic's come up. So that's probably a pretty simple distribution, maybe this is a rising or to the committee of the whole, or just a simple email as to if staff can provide those policies. I think that would be a fairly easy exercise. Here they are, pull them out if there's these 3 communities without going into trying to search every community.
Yeah.
In the last 2 on advocacy, so without going into the detail, I really think if we want to influence at the municipal level, provincial policy legislation, UBCM, going through SILGA, UBCM, that's the process of doing that. And I don't think we've done any research, but I think a lot of this has already happened. I have recall that other communities have brought up issues regarding mobile home parks and in knowing what's happened in the past. So that, I think that's really where we have some ability to influence provincial policy. in understanding where other communities have come, where the concerns are, and that belongs at the UPCN. Now, having said that, that's not we're too late in the game now for this year. But certainly that, could be doing some research at the council level as to, on the policy level. So that's on those points. And then on the final end, that I think that has largely been covered under previous staff reports as to those implications and limitations that we have as local government. So those are my points.
Great, appreciate it. Any other comments from council? Councilor Dunn.
Yeah, to the chair, just comments, I think. I won't be supporting the motion as it's been written for all the reasons that have been said, and I really have nothing new to that. But I will say, I've said publicly, and I will continue to say, I'm not interested in seeing people displaced from manufactured home parks through the redevelopment. I think generally, the consensus around the table is all in on that side. None of us are interested in seeing that.
Right.
When we came to this table, we did not have a policy to protect people. We were brought forth fears, and they're absolutely valid fears, and staff crafted a policy in order to address those fears and to try to offer protection to residents. And as far as we know, and as far as I've seen, and as far as I believe, that policy is sufficient. We have yet to see that policy be tested. We have yet to see any gaps in that policy. If we do see that policy tested, and I do see gaps in that policy, I'll be the first one to support strengthening the policy, re-examining the policy. But I can't justify spending what will probably amount to tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to strengthen a policy that has shown no weakness. We put in a policy, we need to make sure that the policy works, and we need to keep an eye on it. And if it turns out that it is lacking in situations, any of these or any other points, then I'm happy to change my mind and support strengthening it. But as it stands, it is significantly, from my point of view, granted I'm not a planner, but from my point of view, having read the mission, the Langley, and the Kelowna policies, ours is miles better. It covers everything that is mentioned in any of those policies and then some. And I don't want to say good enough because I don't know it, but for right now, it's a really good starting point, and I'm happy to see that we have something in place to protect those people. And if it ends up being deficient, then egg on my face, and I'm happy to re-examine this. But for now, I'm happy with where we are.
Good. Thanks for comments. Any other comments from anyone on this book? Councilor State.
Yeah, just a question through the chair to Director Simon. Do we have it within our purview to issue a moratorium on redevelopment of mobile home parks at this time?
Through your worship to Councillor Stapeners, Council, your policy, it's not statutory. It gives general direction so that an applicant coming in understands, hey, if I want to redevelop a manufactured home park, is there anything that the city would be willing to entertain? Our policy is pretty specific. We don't want anyone displaced. We want people to be able to purchase land within the mobile home park. You could change that policy to say the city is not supportive of rezoning of manufactured home parks, full stop. Will that create unintended consequences? Potentially. What those unintended consequences are from an owner's perspective, we'd have to unpack that a little bit more. But council could pass a policy that says we're not in favor of any rezoning of manufactured home parks within the city.
Follow up.
I mean, I'll just echo the sentiments of Councilor Devon. I don't want to see anybody being displaced out of mobile home parks. I think they are a lifeblood of our community. The people that live there, they're working in our healthcare industries, they're working in our schools. So trying to offer the best level of protection for them is ultimately the goal that we want. I don't see this notice of motion as doing that. I think it's just, I think we saw it at committee of the whole back in June of 2023, and it didn't pass then. And it would have been nice to see maybe a more robust engagement with staff coming up with crafting a policy that would offer better protection, which is sort of the reason why I asked about the moratorium on redevelopment of mobile home parks. And the direction that I was going with that question was, we have seen a prolonged delay in getting affordable housing built in Revelstoke, perhaps by issuing a short 5-year moratorium on redevelopment of mobile home parks. We would essentially see more affordable housing stock come to the market, potentially offering more alternatives for housing. That being said, it's not really the question in front of us, so.
Councilor Chair.
I unfortunately don't have much to offer it here anymore. Most of council's already said most of what I was gonna say. I would like the opportunity to bring the planning staff in to hear of any of their comments outside of just time and effort and the cost of this. If there's any other things that they've flagged in this next motion.
Mr. Simon, do you care to weigh in?
Through your worship, staff have reviewed the notice of motion and have some preliminary comments with respect to some of the items in there, if council would like that. So in general, just kind of going through them. So for the first item, certainly does fall within provincial jurisdiction and, trying to have protection for residents from eviction tactics prior to an application being filed. That would be in perpetuity, right? It might take 20 years for someone to submit an application. So that's something that the residential tenancy branch covers. And honestly, it's something as a planner, I wouldn't actually know where to start because that's not what we're trained in as planners. We're managed land use, right? We're not tenant protection specialists necessarily, which is why we have folks who are tenant protection specialists in terms of crafting this policy. Compensation guidelines during the pre-application process, it would be the same idea. We could look at amending the policy to say as part of redevelopment, if someone is displaced, then they are afforded X, Y, and Z compensation. But every policy we've looked at, and we looked at 4 of them in crafting ours, and we have looked at Langley, Mission, and Kelowna, which I'll mention. Kelowna's is a tenant protection bylaw under Bill 16, so it has nothing to do with manufactured home parks. It only has to do with basically someone's being rent evicted. You have to give X amount of notice, and you have to help them with moving expenses. That's all the policy says in Kelowna, and that is for redevelopment of a residential building with 5 units or more. So we have looked at all these other policies and they all relate to redevelopment. That's the only time we could enforce compensation. But again, ours doesn't specify that because the goal of our policy is to have no one displaced, even if they can't afford to purchase the land. We want to see people stay where they are and pay comparable rates and not be displaced. Therefore, they don't need help with moving expenses. Looking at item 3, again, a mechanism for mobile home park owners not to sign the Form 1097s. This was brought up by the BC Manufactured Home Park Owners Association in November. They issued a release saying that they've come up with a new form. And my understanding is all the banks in Revelstoke are willing to sign it with the exception of one right now that they're currently working through the process. So that is hopefully something that with the new form, this won't be an issue moving forward. And again, it is still something that is within provincial jurisdiction. I would have major concerns if we created a dispute resolution mechanism in the city. A lot of concerns about time and costs associated with that, but also, are we going to create more barriers where if someone doesn't like the decision that the city renders, are they then eligible to go to the residential tenancy branch, therefore further prolonging the process that an owner is going through when they're just trying to sell their manufactured home? Looking at tools like minimum tenancy threshold or compensation eligibility, tenant relocation coordinator, we need to unpack that more. Is this a city position? Is there a need for it right now? And what would that look like? And how would we administer it? And what would the cost associated with it be? And what would the scope and function of that role be? Again, we've looked at all the other policies, Langley, Mission, Kelowna. Langley and Mission, again, their policy is under the pretense that people will be displaced as a result of redevelopment, where that's where our policy is different from any other we've come across in the province. We are not working under that pretense. And again, when someone is going through the process, we can not support a rezoning application if the city feels that too many people are going to be displaced as part of that rezoning. And then lastly, for number 6, this is one that would be very challenging and resource intensive, trying to look at proactive measures to maintain an appropriate database. It would also have a lot of freedom of information items associated with it. Like, would we go knocking on doors in manufactured home parks asking for lease agreements to try and unpack them and put them into some type of database? And then anytime there's a property transfer, it becomes challenging. And Mr. Gibbs just looked up our stats from 2022. We've only had 7 demolition permits pulled for manufactured homes. It is an issue that we deal with where people aren't pulling these permits. And then it has implications for taxes that are collected on their property that become outstanding taxes. So there's all these factors that come in. And I think if the goal of council is to strengthen our policy, you can give us that high level direction. Look at ways to strengthen our policy. There's pieces in there that we could take out. There's compensation guidelines that we could put in. We could put clauses in there that say, don't support stratification of mobile home parks unless 70% of folks can purchase the land. Like, we could put stuff like that in there and get very specific. But again, then we're hitting these arbitrary targets. And in my experience, when you put stuff like that in, a developer is going to try and hit that target. And then what happens if we said, you know, we're not going to support stratification unless 70% of folks can buy the land? What happens to those 30% of folks then? So if we keep it kind of open-ended right now, then it's a fluid process as we go through. And I'll remind you, as council, you guys are the final decision makers for any rezoning application. And none of the mobile home parks that we currently have can be stratified without going through that rezoning process. The staff have been very clear with council's intent. Anyone who's interested in this process, you are required, and it will be legally binding on you before any rezoning is supported, to do your best to make sure people aren't going to be displaced. And if that can't happen to the satisfaction of council, don't expect there to be staff support for your application, and don't expect there to be council support for your application. So there will be checks and balances. It will be a long process for the first person that wants to go through this.
Great.
So
Appreciate
again, happy to answer anything else and happy to work with any council members who want to look at ways to strengthen the policy. Staff will always be in favor of that, but we're going to be really adamant that we want it to be within our scope and legislative authority, most certainly.
My only follow-up, appreciate all that info. My only follow-up is that our current policy is about to be tested with one mobile home park. There are a few residents here today. I don't see the reason to change a policy prior to being used. So let's see how this works out. I think there's tons of protections, and it's been crafted in a way that's for the best. So that is crafted in a way that is best for the community. And I'll just leave it at that.
Councilor Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of questions through to staff just for clarification. So all the mobile home parks within Revelstoke that currently exist that want to stratify will trigger a rezoning. So those will be coming before council should they happen. Is that correct?
Through your worship, Councillor Palmer, yes, you're testing my memory back to 2023 because we did re-examine all the zoning and we double checked it with the zoning bylaw update. We only had one mobile home park that I'm aware of that was actually already zoned for medium density development. And that was in Southside, and that one has already been through a development process, and that happened prior to our policy. So any new mobile home park that wants to stratify, it should all have the mobile home park zoning, and it would require rezoning to allow for that stratification.
So that's interesting in that, so you have a mobile home park. So without looking at the details of the issue, so the mobile home park that exists, it triggers a rezoning even though in reality, there's no real change. So, but it still triggers a zoning. So the second question is, do any trigger OCP amendments, or are they all under be compliant under the OCP to go to a stratification?
Through your worship, Councillor Palmer, the only time it would trigger an OCP amendment is if the proponent was proposing something that did not align with the OCP land use. And to just unpack that for a second, I would go out on a limb and say just about every manufactured home park, we have some where they have like 2 manufactured homes in them that are out on 23 North or West Side Road. But every single developed manufactured home park has the low density land use designation. So if you wanted to stratify it, that land use designation is totally sufficient. But if you wanted to do apartment buildings or big blocks of row homes, then that would trigger an OCP.
Yeah, and that's a different thing. Okay. I guess the last question. So on a rezoning, maybe not the last question. On an application, so the rezoning mobile home park wants to stratify. So that comes, will that trigger a public hearing? And you know where I'm coming from with that. You know that I'm strongly in favor of public hearings regardless whether it triggers or not. But I'm wondering, will that trigger, is that a discretionary thing with council? Or, and just for clarity, as the province has done, it's prohibited us from having public hearings. So I'm hoping it doesn't fall in that scenario.
Mr. Sun.
Through your worship, Councillor Palmer, this is an excellent question, and we actually had a member of one of the mobile home parks call us yesterday, and we had this exact conversation. So I'll relay what I said to them. That's actually something that is yet to be determined. We would actually likely need to get legal on that because in general, if something is compliant with the OCP, what you're really saying is it complies with the OCP land use designation, and so it doesn't trigger an OCP amendment. And under the legislation, you're correct. Whenever it's for residential development, and where it's at least, the way they define it is at least 50% of the area of a new building needs to be residential, we're restricted from holding a public hearing. So my initial take on it is that yes, we would likely be restricted from holding a public hearing. However, under our development approval procedures bylaw, one of the things that staff would be quite adamant about is there would be multiple public information meetings. And we would also, as part of this process, have to gauge and get a firm number on how many individuals are able to purchase the land and actually have detailed financing arrangements. How do we legalize that through a housing agreement covenant that would give them right of first refusal at a certain purchase price? What do we do with the individuals who are unable to purchase their land, making sure that they're not going to see pad rents go up to what the equivalent lease and utility fees would be of a 200% spike in rates where they're going to be displaced anyway. So that will be a big undertaking, and we're still going to have to sort out how do we actually get those numbers from people. And one of the things we've said to applicants as well as individuals that are inquiring is we will be relying on the community to be part of this process throughout. It will be a long, complicated process with a lot of legal review in it. But again, there's certainly potential opportunity to see individuals have the ultimate security, which is owning their land and owning the unit that is fixed upon it.
So one question that I have, Mr. Simon, there's costs with this. The developer is going to pay the cost.
Through your worship, at any pre-application meeting we've had, under our fees and charges bylaw, these would be considered third-party legal expenses that would be borne by the applicant.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Council Lucia, you haven't weighed in. I'm asking if you would like to.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Souls. Just a question for staff, kind of off of Councillor Palmer. With the notes that there wouldn't be an OCP amendment with a density change with a stratification subdivision, does that still entitle each of those lots to have the 3 or 4 units that Bill 44 would allow?
Through your worship, Councillor Lucio, yes, it would.
Okay. Yeah, as this motion is on the table, I'm in support of the intent of it, but I think a lot of these things in this motion are kind of outside of the purview of us as a municipality. And I think working with staff on ways to strengthen this policy would be a little bit more fruitful than this and taking away the work strength from the development services.
Okay. I'll ask one last time. Any other comments before I call a question? Councillor Orlando.
If anyone else had comments, I wasn't. Does somebody else want to go ahead? Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks to Mayor, Council, and staff for comments about this initiative. Just by way of responding generally to a few points, I think that regarding the key issue of jurisdiction, certainly some things are municipal government purview and others are provincial. The intent is not to get into their jurisdiction. I think what we have jurisdiction over is setting policies, so land use redevelopment processes, community planning policies, and really in the spirit of trying to get two ships to meet in the night, I heard from staff now that they're willing to explore this. I also heard Councillor Luciao expressing some support with a staff exploration. Although there's a lot of wording here, really that is the intent, is to have staff relook at this policy now that's been around for a couple of years and hearing some of the issues and challenges and proposing some tweaks and changes as we move forward. Just another couple detail points. With the 1097 form, as they call it, the lease transfer form, just as a note, with some places, and I've seen the letters, there is or still a refusal regardless of changes to banking rules. And I've seen letters that residents have provided me from the owners saying, it's not our business, we're not going to be signing this form anymore. So that has the effect of reducing the value of the property, making them can't sell their property, through a technicality. Now, again, this is outside of our jurisdiction for financing. but incorporating ways to consider that. And that is definitely a pre-application effect. And that's really the thrust here, is that prior to someone making an application, if there's an effort to review, an effort to clear out the park to save money in a future application, I think we should be aware of it. Second point is on database. So this would have been number 6 and point number 6 and point number 1. Neither of them are the intent of neither of them, and I'm just providing clarification, to have some sort of a tribunal or judging system. The point number 1 would be to add protections within the policy that would enhance protection. So there could be numerous steps to do that. I think point number, what was it? Point number 6, the database, the maintained databases, that's not on the city's behalf, that's in the application, and already the process outlines steps to identify people. There's quite a number of things that people will need to do. This is, however, with a view towards looking back in time to understand the history prior to the application. So not just at the point of application, these are all our residents and their addresses and names. It's what happened prior to that, and that would be some. The intent is to have that requirement placed on the owner to do that as part of their redevelopment application thing, and to staff, and also for staff to explore whether they think that is a good idea or not, or perhaps there's another mechanism that's available to us that's easier to do, such as accessing provincial records or tax records or whatever, who knows. So just to have an understanding of what's happening there. And I think, given the feedback from council, what I'm hoping to do is, at this point, is because I want to move forward with something to explore the issues that residents have contacted me with concerns, and we've seen presentations here, is explore right now the possibility of reducing it down to what I'm really hoping for is a report from staff to explore these ideas and then present options back to council with what they could do to strengthen this policy. And key thing here is, the first wording of the policy is it is a redevelopment policy. These jurisdictional issues, they happen downstream of us. Things happen downstream of the policy. We are in the situations pre-application or eventually, or when we have a formal application, as Councilor Cherry alluded to, letters have gone out to one of the ARCs late last week about plans to move forward, which is not a formal application, but is certainly something that puts it front and center of mind. So I want to consider getting to a simplified resolution that would simply ask staff to provide preliminary report back about options to some of the concerns that we are hearing from residents pre-application and with applications.
Okay, appreciate your comments. I'm going to just make one statement and then I'm going to call a question. So as we move forward, Mr. Simon, I'm quite prepared to sit down with you and work in a way that we can enhance, if there is a way to enhance, and then bring something back to council if you're amenable to that.
Your worship, most certainly our team would be happy.
All right, I'm going to, Councilor Lambert.
Just your worship on that, can we formalize that through a resolution? Is that something is there something wording that we could work out right now so that discussion comes back to council, is something that happens in council that we see it? Because if it's just a private conversation, I will not necessarily know the results of that. I don't know how.
No, we want something to come back to council so we can make a motion after we do the motion.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to call the question on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councilor Orlando is in favor, balance of council is opposed. I will put a motion on the table that the mayor sit down with development services staff to look at a way to enhance our existing policy and bring that back to council for interpretation. Does that work for you, Mr. Simon, those words?
Your worship, that works for me.
Good. Second for that motion. Councilor Cherry, any further discussion on that motion?
I'm just wondering if that's better coming to a committee of the whole rather than the council level. I'm just
Why don't we do that? I think then we can have a robust discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, are you okay with that, Council? We bring that to committee of whole and then committee of whole can go that to council.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be, instead of, looking at recommending a discussion and then bringing it forward, why not just have staff bring it forward?
Okay,
The direction is-
I'm
yeah.
looking at a way that staff can say, hey, what do you feel council is trying to determine here? And then work on that and then bring it to council. There's nothing hidden about me doing that. It's just that I think we can get through that fairly quick and then bring something to council where all of you can weigh in. That's my intention. All right, would you be okay with it coming to committee of the whole as a group? Councillor Chair.
Happily amend that to the committee of the whole.
All right, thank you. We will amend that to committee of the whole. Ms. Delascelles for the record. I will now call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you for your time on this. Thank you, Councillor Rolando, for your work on this. I want to move on to provincial appointments, UBCM. I asked all of you to give some input to this because I wanted the consensus to come from council as to our meetings. And we have a list of probably 25 meetings or more that are here. Some are duplicates. I don't want to go into detail on this, and here's my thought process. I think all of the meetings that are here are appropriate. Some will be with staff, some will be with ministers. I would like our staff to reach out to see which meetings we can get, and then we can talk about who's going to UBCM and how we disseminate who goes where. My intention always is hoping that we can, whoever goes to UBCM can attend all of the meetings. I know that's proven almost impossible in some cases where the meetings overlap or we're going east and west and whatnot trying to do that. So there is a couple motions here in our package. And so Ms. Floyd, can you give me clarification as to what you would like to see as far as a motion? Are you okay with me doing this as I just worded, or do you want me to define it now?
I think it's fine the way you just worded it. Ms. Delascelles will go forward and apply for all of these meetings. I know that, I think it's a maximum of 2 ministries and there can be 3 items. So she may need to reduce the number of actual
Topics that we do with
Yes.
minister. Yeah, we're allowed 1 meeting per minister, up to 3 topics. And we cannot submit the same request to multiple ministers.
Oh.
Okay, so that's clarity from them,
If I can, for clarity, ministries or ministers?
ministers,
Okay.
right? And then for the staffing, only 1 meeting request per ministry, agency, commission, or corporation, again, up to 3 topics. To deal with the minister meetings, we have 15 minutes. So it's like speed dating because in the provincial government, 7.5 of that time is going to be them fumbling with the camera to take a picture. And the rest of it wanting to hear what we have to say. And then with the staff meetings, there is 30 minutes of time. So does somebody want to put the motion on the table here for number 1? Councilor Devlin.
Move that the following requests for ministerial appointments during the 2025 UBCM convention be submitted
As in our package.
as in fact.
Second for the motion, please. Councilor Lucille, any discussion on the motion? Councilor Cherry?
Sounds like it'd be imperative to combine some of those
Yes.
prior to. Do you need any wording changed?
I think if we can let, unless you guys want to go through each one, if we can let Ms. Delascelles kind of define how we do that. And then the wording, because she's been basically submitting these meetings for several years now, she'll know how to word it. My question to you, are you okay with that?
I am okay with that, and Ms. Delascelles can always reach out to any of us
Yes.
if there's any
Okay.
conflict.
Councilor Palmer, any comment?
Yeah, I guess I sort of have the same question. That seems that it needs to be vetted, but the motion's fine. I think it's, really, staff need to do some vetting process through this.
Yeah.
Having just gone through the mobile home park policy, there is one in here that Councillor Orlando's submitted, so that's a sort of timely fashion and, you know, how we go through that as that ties. in general, you've heard this from me before, Mayor Souls, there's this conflict of having so many meetings that usually have very minimal weight, if anything, can be very detracting from the policy sessions and other sessions that are very important at UBCM. So that I'm very hesitant of this big list.
Sure.
So from my perspective, if I'm attending, it'll be saying, okay, where's the highest value? So if there's something it's just going to be hot air, quite frankly, I'm not likely going to be in that session because there's something else going on that is important. And I think if we, do meet and sort of say, okay, who's going where, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So that's my only comments in general. Especially the meetings with staff. Without some political weight behind that, majority of the time they don't really care, quite frankly. There's just too many whining communities, and so that's my experience. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, appreciate your comments, and I find that having the staff meetings, I get more work done with the staff than I do. But it's about perspective.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to weigh on the motion on the table? Councilor.
Yeah, Mayor Stills, I agree. There's quite a bit of overlap in these policy requests. I'm happy to have staff review them and try and consolidate them. I think I would also just appreciate when staff do that to give a heads up to council on the changes, just to have a look at them, because although some overlap, some of them have requests that are outside of one or the other. So if that can be part of the process, I'm happy with that.
Sure. Just with the minister meeting, we have for July 2nd. So Ms. Delasall will be working diligently on those, and they can let us know which one she's submitted to, and if we hear anything back. Usually takes 4 weeks, and then we've got till August 20th, I believe, for the staff request. But she'll work on all of that sort of stuff and be as concise as possible, and we'll see how we make out with the meetings. Quite often, we don't get any minister meeting if we get 2 or 3. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Item number 2. Councillor Cherry.
I move that the following requests for appointments with provincial agencies, commissions, and corporations during the 2025 UBCM convention be submitted.
As in our package.
Determined by, as in our package.
All right.
Can we add as vetted and by staff and determined by council and vetted through staff?
No.
Sure, absolutely.
No. Of course. Sounds better.
Thanks for that.
Were you seconding that?
What, sure.
All right. All right, Councillor Palmer seconds that. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you all for your time, and thank you, Ms. Delasall, for putting all of this together and taking this information from council. Staff reports, it's 11A. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me? Councillor Lucille.
And with the 2024 Statement of Financial Information be approved, and that the Mayor and Deputy Director of Finance be authorized to execute the same on behalf of the city.
Seconder, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 11B, Ray, someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Stigenhurst.
Oh, sure. I move that the amended terms of reference for the Revelstoke Area Emergency Management Program Management Committee and RAMP Executive Committee dated June 24th, 2025 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Lucille. Any questions? Firefighter Dave Moan, who's in charge of this stuff, is online. So if we have questions, Mr. Moan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Any questions from council for Mr. Moan? Thank you for that. Looking all shiny in that uniform. I'm feeling underdressed. Thanks. The terms of reference is particular for the city of Revelstoke and seems to work best, amended to work best for our community. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Moan?
Yeah, that's fair. It just lays out what the requirements are. The purpose of it is just to update the legislation during our periodic review. It's a housekeeping thing that we've done just to reference the Emergency and Disaster Management Act, which is now in place from the Emergency Program Act. And then it just states which staff members are going to make up the committee.
Great, appreciate that. Any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Moan, appreciate your time. Moving on to 11C, Development Permit 2025-00295 Cartier Street. Someone want to put that motion on the table for me, please? Councillor Devlin.
Move that development permit DP 2025-002 be issued for the form and character of an 8-unit ground-oriented storage and manufacturing facility at 95 Cartier Street, period.
Second for the motion, Councillor Cherry. Any comments or questions for Mr. Simon? Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Mayor Sauls. Just looking for a high-level overview from Director Simon.
All right.
Through your worship, Councillor Cherry, if I may, this is Ms. Colmars, is the file manager.
All right.
So if I may defer to her.
Yes.
Comars, you're up. Thank
This will be my last one as planner one here at council, as I've decided to take a different position with the community economic development as the economic coordinator. So, ta-da!
Congratulations and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. So this is to continue, this is to complement what is currently existing on site. It's the phase 2 of a 2-part development. It's an 8-unit bay, ground oriented. It's industrial, intended for industrial uses. As part of this permit, they will be completing the landscaping requirement from DP 2023-005. And they will also be implementing asphalt and putting in part into the site itself. We've worked for many years with the applicant on this one, and it's meeting our current guidelines. And really the only reason that it's coming for council's consideration is because it's an industrial permit.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Comars? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Comars. Thank you for your work on this, for your work with Development Services, and we wish you all the best as you move on.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to item 11D, Heritage Alteration Permit. Ms. Comars, oh, I was premature, and I knew as soon as I was saying that, go, she's here for the second one. All right, we're going to put the motion on the table and then.
Your worship, before we put the motion on the table, I think it's imperative that staff give us a detailed review of this.
Okay. All right, Ms. Comars, we'll let you give us an oversight if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So this is a minor heritage permit, which typically would be delegated, and it would be handled within our own Department of Development Services. The reason why this is being brought forward for council's consideration is that the addition of 4 skylights in general, are not found within our heritage conservation area guidelines. So it puts staff into an icky position where we're putting forward a recommendation which our current guidelines don't actually have any rules or regulations around. So the current recommendation that you're seeing is a little bit of a middle ground of interpretation of the guidelines as they are currently written. The Heritage Conservation Area Guidelines will be going for a redrafting within Development Services in 2026. Skylights are one of the topics on the table for the Heritage Conservation Committee. It will be discussed within a future committee meeting, but as we know, Heritage and APC are currently in the process of being amalgamated. So there's some behind the scenes things that need to happen there, but the guidelines themselves do need an update as they leave a high level of interpretation up to staff. And the decision was made to bring this forward for council to make the decision, as skylights are currently not found in the guidelines.
Great, appreciate that. And just in particular to this address, there are skylights in other areas of the home already?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be, the whole application itself meets our Heritage Conservation Area Guidelines minus the skylights.
Okay.
So that's the one gray area where staff would like direction from council. Either direction that council would like to go is really up to you, but happy to to answer any questions you might have regarding the guidelines and with directly with NDS for reviewing of those guidelines will be.
All right, thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I move that heritage alteration permit HAP 2025-001 be approved at 511 Mackenzie Avenue for the design of an attached covered patio and walkways, lot 12 and lot 13, block 37, section 27, township 23, range 2, west of the 6th Meridian, Kootenai District Plan 636B. Subject to the following preconditions to issuance being met, that the owner amend the drawings, removing the skylights at the front of the property of the proposed covered porch, allowing for this rear skylights only viewable from the rear laneway to remain.
Okay, seconder for that motion, Councillor Cherry.
I'll second it for conversation.
Discussion. Councillor Palmer, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. I think staff have found a good middle ground and even though the skylights aren't explicit in the guidelines, they're definitely the intent on the roof line and the streetscape is clear. And so I think this meets that intent behind the guidelines, and applaud staff for finding that what I would consider a good middle ground. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor Sauls. As council is aware, they have the ability to approve this without the addition of the skylights, with the compromise of the skylights, or just allowing the skylights. There are a number of houses in town, especially in the heritage conservation area, that already have skylights. The reason this was before us is because staff didn't want to make the decision without council weighing in, as it was a delegated permit. I think we need to be conscious if we restrict if we continue to restrict the heritage conservation area from actually improving their homes, whether that be for aging lifestyle or just because they're falling apart and over 100 years old. I'm happy to see how other councillors feel about this, as well as happy to bring in staff on the matter. One of the reasons it's in front of us is because our heritage conservation area guidelines just don't mention skylights at all. They don't say that they can't happen. They don't say that they do. They just do not mention it.
Silent.
So there's going to be a lot of different typologies, different types of development that just isn't mentioned. As I believe it's coming back next year for
2026, that's on, it's at the direction of council.
Okay.
Mr. Simon.
Through your worship, we are hoping and planning for 2026, but it will be dependent on the status of workload this year and what projects carry forward into 2026. So hopefully before the end of 2026, I would say that we're at least initiated the project of reviewing the design guidelines.
Great, thanks for that comment. Any other comments on the motion on the table? Councillor Stick first.
In general, I'm supportive of allowing people to have skylights. I think most people know their residents better than others, and there might be reasons that we're not being presented right now. I think natural light in Reynolds Oak, especially when it's dark for the majority of the year, can be really beneficial, especially when you're in those living spaces that may not receive natural light anyways. So for that reason, I won't be supporting it as it is proposed, with my general support going towards allowing the skylights throughout the residence.
Okay. Any other comments? I understand where staff are going with this. And as Councillor Cherry said, it remains silent on skylights. I'm supportive either way. However, if the proponent wants skylights, I don't think I should be the one to hinder that sort of thing, especially where they're going and the trees and whatnot around the area. I don't have an issue with skylights going in. So any other comments? If we vote in favor of this, that basically is saying only allowing rear skylights, not allowing skylights in the front, as we've seen in the drawing in our package. If we vote this down, is there a way to bring that back to allow skylights? Ms. Floyd, comment on legislation.
Mayor Sauls, if nobody else from council wants to weigh in, I would happily propose a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the table.
Okay, we can discuss that.
I'd like to see it as a formal amendment, not friendly amendment.
Formal amendment to strike out the subject to the following preconditions to issuance being met.
Okay,
I'll second.
you're gonna second that?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion on that? Councillor Plum.
I'll be opposed to the amendment. The silence on skylights was because probably not anticipating that at the time the guidelines were made. That said, the guidelines on protection of the heritage aesthetics is clear, and that's the intent. And we've seen degradation of our heritage through a number of applications over a number of years. And I will admit that I'm strongly influenced from international travel, where in countries that do a good job of protecting heritage aspects. And even though we sort of think we're a young country and that these don't really have real heritage, actually they do. And we're now into plus 100-year homes. And protections, for example, in France are not really that old. 100 years ago, they were just 100 years old. Same kind of protections that they've done well. I've also seen in Japan where they went through cultural shifts where they wanted to move on and modernize and destroyed huge cultural assets forever. And so this on this particular one, and as the guidelines are on the streetscape, and that aesthetic, that heritage is important. And I think by having this amendment included in there is an important component as we move forward. We have heard this year recently from large numbers of people, not just in the heritage protection area, but within the community, of the importance of heritage. And I would just caution on that gradual degradation. So I will not be supporting of the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry.
Thanks. Just in case not all council got the email, although it is addressed to council, the person who wrote our heritage conservation area guidelines wrote in encouraging the council approve the design for the addition as submitted by the proponent, and believes that the recommendation in the council report to remove the skylight from the front of the porch is unnecessary, with a whole bunch of technical info after that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on record as well.
Any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? Councillor Palmer, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Orlando, which way are you voting?
Just trying to get up to speed. So your amendment is striking everything following subject to.
Let me bring it back up. Just the conditions, yes.
Not
Not allowing skylights on one side of the roof.
Sorry, I'm just having difficulty reading that because it says that it be allowed, and this is requiring an amendment.
To allow skylights at the front of the proposed covered porch.
It seems to me that it essentially is the same thing.
No. If I may for
Sorry,
clarity,
just for clarity, I'm just trying to understand what the difference would be.
Councillor
if I may for clarity's sake, item A says that the owner amend the drawings, removing the skylights at the front. And what the discussion's been is to essentially strike it after being met so that skylights would be allowed throughout as proposed in the drawings. So I hope that answers your question.
So as amended would not allow them up front.
Yes, it would.
It would.
It would. Sure, I'll support that.
Okay. So we have Councillor Devlin and Councillor Palmer opposing the amendment. Balance of council saying yes to the amendment. So the amendment passes. Now we need to vote on the original motion. Is that correct?
As amended.
As amended. Yes, thank you. I always forget those two words. So I'm going to call a question on the original motion as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on we're down to communications.
Communication.
Okay. Social Development Committee minutes, Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor Solus. We had a presentation from Samantha Green, the food security coordinator with LFI, just going over all of the work that she's done this year, as well as kind of her work plan moving forward. We also had a presentation by Elise from Community Connections. She's the community connector. It's a role run through United Way, making seniors stay connected within the community. And then we had a little talk about the heat emergency response plan.
Any comments from council? Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Solus, and thank you to the committee and Councilor Lucio on that. There's a couple motions in here that really should be recommendations coming back to council because it's not direction. They don't have the authority for directing staff outside their general amendments. So that's on the economic development. I think you're addressing that outside of this, but I'm just sort of flagging this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Public Infrastructure Committee. We have discussed Big Eddy transportation plan in the Big Eddy, what it was called.
Active transportation.
Thank you. Active transportation plan. We also discussed water use at food commons and golf course water and how to make sure we get the best use of water for the food commons and how we should supply it and how we should have it paid for. So that was just general conversation regarding that golf course water, of course, regarding irrigation and how the filters and whatnot. For that, just clarity on those things. Any questions from council? Mr. Black, would you like to weigh in at all?
Thank you, Richard. Just very, very briefly, after our discussion at the PIC, and given that the staff is undertaking the water metering program, which we expect to implement next year, we will be needing to do a water rate study as a part of that program. And so as staff, we will make sure we accommodate these questions regarding food commons, farming, and golf course irrigation needs as through that evaluation. So I expect in the fall, or at least spring, we will see or fall, winter, we will see a report coming to council for adoption of fees and charges bylaw that would account for these changes.
Great. Any comments? Councilor Terry.
Sorry, if I can through the chair, I'd like to invite Director Black to the next golf course meeting. Happens in about a month, just to chat about the water systems. They would love to get off city water for their irrigation, and they're looking for ways to do that and could use a little guidance. There's also some concerns about different pipe sizes and information they're getting from different staff members. If you're okay with it. And your schedules.
If you would advise me of the dates, I'll be sure not to be in town.
Perfect.
And if they can entice you, you might have to do an 18-hole walkabout first.
Perfect.
We can show you the location of 2,000 sprinkler heads.
Awesome. I will make myself available. Let me know when that is.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, good. All right, moving on to Environmental Advisory Committee. I know that Councillor Stapenhurst was away, I believe, at FCM at that time. There's some notes in there if there's any comments. Otherwise, we'll just move on. Councillor.
Yeah, just a comment because I continue to be concerned about cancellation of meetings and meetings not meeting quorum. Just a consideration is maybe the committees that have a council representative that an alternative be there, because I think probably someone could have been there alternative to ensure that they could have continued. Sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment. RAM management meeting, and Mr. Moan is now left. And basically, there was an absence of quorum on that one.
That's all I wanted.
Okay, all right. And
just a comment on that minute or the record. It's saying there wasn't quorum, but it's showing the members. It's not showing who was not there. So there's just a clerical thing there. So for clarity,
Okay.
I'm not sure who. It
Well, it
shows that
says
there
present at the top and then it has that listing, but it doesn't say who
wasn't there. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. And then Youth Advisory, Councilor Lucille.
Yeah, we had a youth liaison report from Ainsley Arthur. It was her last one as she has resigned from that position to go to school, and her role has been taken over by Samantha Green, who's also the student's security coordinator. And then we also talked about the youth liaison work plan for the next school year.
Great. Any comments from council? Seeing none, then we have a letter request for resolution support for UBCM regarding modernization of wastewater regulations. Anyone want support that as it's mentioned here, or we just support it as we go to UBCM? I think that's what we'll do. If you're okay, now we'll support it UBCM. Ms. Delaselle, do we have any questions from the press?
There are no questions from the press, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'd like to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1 A, G, and K of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion for me, please? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Stabenhurst, all in favor?
You missed C, the one we added.
Oh, yes, I knew I would, right? Thank you. So we're going to add C to that as well, 90.1 A, C, and EIO, whatever we got. Thank you. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a few minute break and come back in camera. Thank you.